Then now we go for risk response. What is a risk response? Risk response is to develop strategies that to respond to risks. Very simple. And we have four major strategies. The first one we call mitigating risks. What does it mean, mitigating? What does it mean, mitigating? Reduce. Okay. Yes, mitigate is the same thing of reduce. And here, but the mitigate is much better word, or much. That's a word that's more professional, if I could say, than reduce. So every time that you have to talk about reduce risk, you talk about mitigating. And I would say that if you are in a job interview and you say mitigate the risks 3 times, you increase your probability of being hired by the company. If you use the word mitigate 5 times, it's almost sure that you will get the job. So use the word mitigate. And mitigate means reduce. But it's not just the impact. The impact is one aspect. It also mitigates the likelihood. So if you do something to mitigate the damage that the risk can infer on the project activity, is one thing. But you can use actions to mitigate the risk. So we use face masks to reduce the probability of transmitting the COVID virus. It does not eliminate the probability of transmitting the virus, but it reduces that probability. So masks to cover your face reduce the probability, is a COVID mitigating strategy. COVID risk mitigating strategy. We use that to reduce the likelihood. We may have strategies to mitigate risk and we focus on the impact. Let's say that some people, I'm not sure if that's true or not. Let's suppose that it's true, okay? Let's suppose, I'm not sure. I'm not a medical, you have to ask. But some people say that vitamin D reduce the how can I say? When the disease, how strong is the disease? So vitamin D may reduce the COVID impact on the health of a person. I'm not sure if that is right or wrong. Don't take vitamin D because of me. But that would be, if that for any reason would be true, you may use that strategy to mitigate the impact. You are not reducing the probability of getting COVID, but in case you get, if you have high levels of vitamin D in your body, below that maximum that you can get per day, you reduce the impact of the adverse health consequence. And that is, reduce the impact. So mitigating, we focus on reduce impact or probability. Can be both. Anything that we do to reduce probability or reduce the impact or reduce both, we are mitigating the risks. Okay, that's one type of strategy. We have a strategy that we can call avoiding the risk. For instance, if you cancel the project, we avoid the risk. For the Manchester Soccer Club tournament, if you move from outdoors to indoors, you avoid that risk that some people last class talk about, inclement weather. So inclement weather would not affect the condition of the game if the game is indoor. So that is a strategy that could avoid the risk. So you can cancel the activity, change the scope, or change the project, and that you can avoid the risk. Anyway, you have to remove or change the nature of the activity in order to avoid the risk. So because the risk is there, but if you remove the activity, you eliminate the risk. Transfer the risk. Transfer the risk is when you transfer the impact of the risk to a third part. Let's say when you hire insurance and you say about for car accidents, what do? You push the consequence of a car accident to a third part called the insurance company. And that's a way of transferring the risks. Okay? There's other ways of doing that. Or in some case, you cannot mitigate, you cannot eliminate, you cannot transfer. So you have to retain the risk. But that's a conscious decision. You can retain the risk, or I would just talk about something here about two things about risks. Okay? So I'll be going to the whiteboard because I'd like to talk to you about some considerations when you'll be retaining the risk. So when you do a risk response, you go here and you evaluate the risk, and then you come here and you do a risk response. You prepare a risk response. Okay? Two things that I would like to talk that is about, you have to think if the amount of time and cost that you put on the risk response is give you benefits in terms of the risk. What I'm saying that? Let's take one activity, okay? There is one risk here that affects an activity. Okay? That activity has an estimated cost of $100. Let's suppose that if a risk happens, if there is a risk event that is here, you may increase the cost of the activity to 120. It means that you are paying $20 more. You would be if that risk over budget. Okay? Over budget. Let's say that you think about a response. So you're developing a response. You think about a response. And you develop a response. Maybe you go from outdoors to indoors. But the cost of the indoor court is much higher than outdoor. Much higher. And maybe that response may cost you maybe $50. Just the response, to implement the response, it may cost you $50. What would you do in that situation? Would you retain the risk, and if the risk happens, you have to pay $20 more, or would you increase your budget and pay $50? What would you do? Because first, I'm not sure if that risk will happen. Second, the response is much expensive than the additional money that I will pay in case the risk happen. So we may leave the risk there. So when we talk about retain the risk, maybe a deliberate decision. Sometimes because it's impossible to mitigate. Sometimes it's because the cost of the response or the effort for the response doesn't pay off the benefits, and therefore it's better to take the risk. But that is a conscious decision that is an outcome of risk analysis. Is that okay? And that is the third situation in which we say, let's retain the risk. Okay? But that can be because it's too costly or too difficult to develop a response. It's better to leave the risk there. We have in that exhibit 10.3 from that book over here, you have a strategy. You may use avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept. Accept is the same as retain. Avoid, change project plan or scope. Decide not to perform the project. You avoid the risk. Transfer, insurance, fixed price contract. Okay? Hire expert. Mitigate, you'll be lower the probability of impact. You may build redundancy. What do I mean redundancy? So for the soccer tournament, you may think that you need just one soccer field. But to avoid that one game delay the other game, you may rent two. You may rent two soccer fields. You'll be using most of the time just one, but you'll be renting two. That is called redundancy, in which you just use one and have one backup. available at all time. So, or you may decide to accept the risk, deal with it if and when it happens. And so that is one way of thinking about risk. So that table here, you have some example of response. Contingency planning. Contingency planning, what is a contingency plan? Is you can create an alternative, a secondary plan. So you have your initial plan and you create a secondary plan. That secondary plan, you keep it, you don't show to anyone. You discuss, you prepare that plan, but you'll be just following and triggering or starting that plan if the risk happen. Like say, in the soccer tournament, we have the example of inclement weather. In case of the inclement weather, you may say, okay, so someone will be, you have to retain the risk. There is nothing you can do. It's too expensive to move indoors. Let's put someone monitoring the weather. And the day before, that person will make a decision if it will cancel or not the games. So if that person just perceives that there is a inclement weather and decide to cancel the game, you should have a contingency planning. That contingency may say that you have to send emails to all participants, call the participants, reschedule the game, and call back the participants. And you have already agreement with the person, the owner of the field, so you can do some kind of agreement with him. So you can develop an alternative plan that will be used if a possible risk actually occurs. Why that? Why that? Because it's better for, in some cases, you have all the plans, some contingency plans for risk that you need to retain, or in which the mitigation was not good enough to reduce the risk impact or probability at an acceptable risk value. You may decide to create a contingency plan because you have time. You can discuss with the people. Because if you live and wait for the risk or the damaging event occurs, people will be under pressure, and you have to gather people together and say, oh, let's decide now. No, I have to ask my boss. I don't know what we should do. So, and the pressure is always more difficult. So contingency plan is always good. Okay? As well, you may have contingency funding and time buffers. So you may have, like, if it's rain, let's put an additional budget here for rent additional time in the field. So you inform your client about that contingency fund. Maybe you may add some time buffers between tasks, and that would be like say if you are scheduling the games, you may add 15 minutes between games. Of course, you have to pay more time in your rental. Your rental will increase, but you have a buffer that between games. So if for any reason one game delay a little bit, you don't affect the next game. So you can keep your time buffer. Just an example of things that you can do, and that would maybe require extra funds and so on. We work hard to help you to get better marks, be prepared for job interviews, and excel in work meetings. You can send your questions in the comment area below. I will be pleased to answer all of them. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Américo e-Learning.